Thank you, Margaritis. Well, 10 years ago, there was a debate in Europe, and even not only in Europe, about the lost generation, because we had a very sharp, massive increase of youth unemployment, reaching even in some member states over 50%. For the time being, we are not yet there, but there is a risk that the young will be the victims also of this crisis, and that finally there will be a lost generation or a lockdown generation, and they will be the losers of this crisis. I read in a newspaper that the young will be the victims of a frozen labor market. And that's indeed a risk. We managed for the time being to limit the explosion of unemployment in Europe. And this is, I think, a very important achievement. And we managed this in comparison to other places in the world, the US, for instance, because we had this short-time work schemes which were applied everywhere in practically all the member states and kept people in their job. But finally, the young, those who are not yet in a job, and those who are in more precarious situations because they have time-limited labor contracts, well, they are less protected also by these schemes. And therefore, I think it was very important to give a strong message and also to propose a certain number of measures to the young, that they are not forgotten, and that the instruments we have and a few others can be used at least to act on this issue of youth unemployment. And well, the instruments were already mentioned. First, the idea of a youth employment support, which is the global approach, and which means first a better, more efficient youth guarantee. I think Vice President Dombrovskis has already pointed out the success of the youth guarantee. It took some time before it really started to be implemented in the member states, but now more or less every member state has a youth guarantee. So we have the instrument. Now we have to gear this instrument to the new needs. First, the crisis, so make it more efficient, help the young through a more personalized guidance, bringing them as much as possible to a job, or at least to a training which leads to a job. So the whole philosophy is skills for jobs. So this is the linkage we are very much emphasizing. So this will cost also some money, that's obvious. The Youth Employment Initiative of the present financial perspective reached more or less an expenditure of 22 billion. So we think that 22 billion should at least be our objective also in terms of expenditure in the framework of employment support. Just one word. We have now a lot of young people who expect to become a traineeship, to get a traineeship or to become apprentices. But they find very often closed doors because a lot of SMEs cannot or do not want to take the risk to take young people on board. So we have to work with the SMEs and say, no, you have to, we support you, we give you money, we pay for the cost of taking apprenticeships in order to train, to skill young people you will need in a few years' time when the economy has restarted. So I think this is also a very strong investment in the future. Now, a word on vocational. I think vocational is certainly the best way to bring people into a job. The transition from school and training to the job is certainly shown that vocational training is the right way. We have to extend vocational training. We have to reinforce vocational training, building on the different experiences. It's not just taking one example of good vocational training and try to to impose it, as Vice President Skinas has said, as Margaritis has said. So I think this is a very important element to work on vocational training, and therefore a new recommendation on vocational training. And then the skills agenda, I think this is a broader approach. It's not just for the young, it's for everybody. And we have a major challenge. It's not the challenge only of the crisis, because we are facing two challenges at the same time. We have a crisis, a real recession on one hand, and we have to try to find the right solutions also at the employment level to respond to this crisis. And we have a big transformation of our economies. And that's the digital transformation, that's the green transformation. And that means that a lot of business models, will be changed in the future. And to be able to follow these changes, we have to skill, reskill, upskill millions of people. Some say that we have in the next few years to reskill and upskill half of the European workforce. And we see it in a lot of sectors. Automotive is one good example. 14 million people working in this industry. We have to reskill and upskill these people working in that sector. And therefore, in the skills agenda, it's very important to work with all the stakeholders. The industry, and that's the linkage also with our industrial policy, what Commissioner Breton and Vice President Vestager have presented, the ecosystems, the industrial ecosystems. We have to put a strong element of skilling and upskilling in these policies. And therefore, this Pact for Skills is quite key, because this is finally where the different stakeholders come together, take commitments, and find the right solutions for their industry, for their sector, for their business. And I think this is the next step to implement the skills agenda, because the skills agenda is a broad approach with 12 very precise actions, but we have to start now. That means the industry, member states, regions, and the help of the Commission to implement this skills agenda. And therefore the Pact for Skills, which we have already started working on, which will be finalized by November, is a key element in managing these transitions to a more digital economy, to a more green economy, to help the recovery. And therefore it's absolutely key to have an agreement on the recovery and resilience plan, because this is also the money we need to be successful and to be successful on this transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now open the floor to your questions. Please remember that you need to raise your hand electronically for me to understand that you wish to ask a question. And please, at this stage, focus your questions on the initiatives that were presented by the three members of the college and to the matters on today's college agenda. I already see Oliver Grimm. Can you hear us?